Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating, deeply liberating, and, fair warning, highly unconventional approach to well-being. We're looking at the 19th century philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer and his incredibly practical guide to existence, Counsels and Maxims. If you have ever felt completely overwhelmed by that constant, exhausting pressure to just be happy, well, Schopenhauer's ideas are going to feel like a massive weight lifting right off your shoulders. Okay, let's dive into this. It sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? Our entire culture is literally built on the pursuit of happiness. But Schopenhauer introduces a pretty counterintuitive premise here. What if chasing joy is actually the very thing making us miserable? What if this constant demand to find positive, sparkling happiness is basically a trap, and stepping completely out of that trap is the only way to actually find some peace?
So let's look at Section 1, the trap, or the illusion of happiness. And this brilliantly illustrates the setup we've all been born into. Society presents us with this fake, totally theatrical version of joy, what Schopenhauer calls the hieroglyphics of joy. I mean, look at what we do for festivals and big events. We fire cannons, beat drums, put on full dress uniforms. We hang banners everywhere. But Schopenhauer points out that these loud, highly orchestrated events are almost always just a sham. It's an outward show. In the middle of all these massive, brilliant gatherings, true joy is usually the only guest who declined the invitation. He even compares it to those long, elaborate funeral processions with endless rows of carriages. If you look closely, the carriages are mostly empty. It's all just a performance. Instead of massive festivals, Schopenhauer gives us this absolutely wonderful metaphor. Joy is like gold in the Australian mines. You don't find it just sitting there in massive, predictable, easy-to-grab heaps. Not at all. It's found completely by the caprice of chance. True joy slips in uninvited, often making its appearance in the most trivial circumstances, or hanging out in the most common company. It's tiny, rare grains of gold. If you go out into the world expecting massive heaps of joy just because you threw a huge party, well, you are setting yourself up for some bitter disappointment. Which brings us to Section 2, the reality. Pain is the only reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it flips our standard worldview completely upside down. Drawing on a profound insight from Aristotle, Schopenhauer argues that pleasure is merely a negative state. Let that sink in. It's just the temporary removal of an obstacle or a desire. It's a will-o'-the-wisp, an illusion that practically lures you right into the swamp. Pain, on the other hand, pain is the only truly positive, active, affirmative force we actually feel. Think about it. When you hurt, you feel it instantly and undeniably. When you're perfectly fine, you barely even notice it. Think about your daily life for a second. Imagine your entire body is generally healthy and feeling absolutely great. But you have one painful, throbbing sore spot on your foot. That tiny little spot completely absorbs your attention. It absolutely ruins your general comfort. The exact same thing happens in life. You could have dozens of highly successful affairs going on, but that one frustrated aim, that one little thing going wrong, becomes a constant, nagging trouble to you. The barrier, the pain, is literally the only thing that loudly proclaims its presence.
Schopenhauer leans heavily on this quote from Voltaire. And yeah, I know, it sounds super gloomy at first, but realizing this is actually an incredibly liberating truth. When young people read poetry and romance, they're looking into this magic mirror that shows them a fairy tale vision of positive happiness. So they chase it, they take massive, crazy risks to get it, and they usually end up broke, distressed, or completely heartbroken. Accepting that sorrow is the baseline reality actually protects you from all that trickery. This leads perfectly into what he calls eudaimology. Real success in life is not calculated by tallying up all the thrilling pleasures you've enjoyed. Not at all. It is calculated by looking at the evils, the calamities, and the suffering you have successfully dodged. Living happily simply means living less unhappily. The ultimate goal of life isn't to reach some exalted, magical state of bliss. It's just to endure, to tolerate, and to successfully navigate your way around disaster. So, let's move to Section 3, the blueprint, or the architecture of happiness. Let's shift away from the philosophical theory for a minute and look at Schopenhauer's highly practical rules for protecting our peace. He gives us this architecture of happiness, and it's actually the exact opposite of how you'd build a house. In regular architecture, a massive, broad foundation is the safest, right? But in happiness, a broad foundation is a total disaster. If you require 8 specific things to be happy, like immense wealth, status, a perfect marriage, a huge social circle, fame, perfect health, losing just one of those ruins your whole life.
Instead, build your happiness on a narrow foundation. Require only one or two really simple things. Reduce your expectations, and suddenly you are incredibly secure against fate. Just like the old French proverb says, the best is the enemy of the good, Schopenhauer points out the utter folly of paying a real positive price to achieve a totally illusory gain. Why in the world would you take on immense stress, work 80-hour weeks, and risk ruining your health, which, remember, is real pain, just to try and capture extreme wealth or extreme happiness, which is just an illusion? Leave well enough alone. Seriously, do not risk real pain to chase fake pleasure.
Look at this number 1. Here is a brilliant little diagnostic tool from Schopenhauer. Take stock of your life right now. If you are currently bothered by just one trivial annoyance, what we would call a first world problem today, like your coffee being entirely the wrong temperature or having a super slow Wi-Fi connection, it means you are actually doing incredibly well. Because when true misfortune strikes, you become completely numb to trifles. If a triviality is your biggest problem today, your foundation is incredibly secure.
But of course, we mess up this secure foundation all the time through the utter folly of long-term planning. In our youth, we suffer from this massive optical illusion. Life seems incredibly long. So, in middle age, we toil relentlessly for decades, preparing for some grand goal, building immense wealth, seeking high office, mastering some kind of art. But here is the profound tragedy. By the time you finally attain that goal in old age, time has totally changed you. You discover your tastes have shifted, or your body simply lacks the capacity to actually enjoy the wealth you spent your entire life acquiring. You win the prize, sure, but in winning it, you realize the prize is no longer meant for who you've become. Let's wrap up with Section 4, the alchemy of life. So, you might be wondering, is it all just misery? Not at all. Here is the final uplifting twist in Schopenhauer's thought. So, the crucial point is that life is like a journey where the landscape is constantly changing. We set out expecting to find this glittering castle of pleasure, happiness, and joy. But because those things are basically illusions, we rarely find them. However, if we're paying attention, we realize we actually get something infinitely better along the path: experience, insight, knowledge. This is a real, permanent blessing. We don't get the fleeting joy we wanted, but we gain deep, lasting wisdom. Schopenhauer beautifully compares us to the ancient alchemists. Think about it. The alchemists spent their entire lives searching in vain for the philosopher's stone to turn lead into gold. They never found it. On paper, it was a massive failure. But in that intense, supposedly failed pursuit, they accidentally discovered gunpowder, the secrets of China and porcelain, and modern medicines. They discovered the very laws of nature. The pursuit itself, even if the original goal was completely impossible, yielded totally unexpected and incredibly valuable instruction. We are all alchemists in our own lives. And that leaves us with this final, really important question to consider. Are you ready to relieve yourself of society's toxic, exhausting pressure to constantly be happy? What if you just lowered your expectations, narrowed your foundation, and simply stopped chasing the optical illusion of extreme joy? Think about your current ambitions right now. Are they chasing a mirage, or are they building your insight? By making that one simple trade, you can embrace the quiet, unassailable reality of gathering true wisdom and experience.